And now, dear friends and colleagues, to the final session of our day, tensions in the transition. As we all know, the speed at which the transition needs to happen is leading to tensions, is leading to kickbacks and tensions particularly between different stakeholders and different principles. Every day we seem to hear about the transition versus biodiversity, the transition versus jobs and politics, the transition versus culture, history. How do we bring these seemingly intractable interests back into balance and do so in a way that meets the pressing time deadlines that we need to meet, in a way that helps us to meet our climate goals? That's what this session is all about. And I'm delighted to say that kicking our discussion off is Mirey Atallah, who joins us now live from Nairobi, because she is the head of the Nature for Climate branch of UNEP, the UN Environment Programme. And we've asked Mirey to talk to us about some of the trade-offs between access to energy and natural resource management, between immediate benefits and long-term benefits, and also about climate justice, how it unfolds, not just at a local, but also at a global level. Mirey Atallah, we're delighted that you can join us.
Hi, and thank you very, very much. It's a great pleasure for me to join you here. And thank you so much, Nisha, for the introduction. I will try to keep it short, to keep also a little bit of space and time for some reflections, question and answers, maybe debates as well. Indeed, as you've mentioned, we currently are no longer at the stage where we were either in 1992 during the Rio summit, or even at COP21 in 2015, when the first concept of nationally determined contributions and the Paris Agreement came about. During these negotiations of the COP, of the UNFCCC COP, the debate revolved around what is a safe world for humanity, and that's when the agreement around a 1.5 capping, a change in global warming trajectory at 1.5 degrees was agreed. So, and here I will bring about some of the tensions that occurred in these discussions. At the time of the Paris COP, the debate was among small island developing states that were. I see that I froze. Okay, so the debate was among small island developing states who felt that their future is at stake if we actually go beyond 1.5 degrees. It was between also among countries that have economies that rely very strongly on fossil fuels for their development as the main source of economic revenue, and what would it mean to transition out of fossil fuel and an economy that revolves around revenues generated from fossil fuels. Today, we're at a world which, as the UNEP emission gap report, I will post the link in the chat for those who are interested or who haven't read it. Our emissions gap report issued last year ahead of the Dubai COP indicated that we are currently on track towards 1.8 degrees, and looked at the different policy options that are currently included in the nationally determined contributions, and demonstrates that in fact we currently live in a 1.8 degree world, but we are on an increasing trend towards 2.8 degree, and therefore that there is a tremendous need for addressing greenhouse gas emissions quickly, so rapidly, intensively, and in a way that is a whole or that represents a whole of economy approach. What it means for small island developing states, you will have also followed maybe during the Sharm el-Sheikh COP, the year before, COP27, that there was a decision on loss and damage. The decision on loss and damage finally recognizes that we are on an unavoidable pathway towards climate change, that we will be hitting what we call hard limits to adaptation, and that therefore we need to consider the losses and the damages that will be incurred from climate-induced disasters. And here I would like to flag another tension. It's that tension between the short term and the long term. On the short term, when we talk about losses and damages or climate-induced disasters, we're talking about extreme weather events. We're talking about the flood in Pakistan that happened in 2022, July 2022, where Pakistan experienced floods and monsoons that were 700 times above their average. What it meant is that we had 4 million people displaced, we had energy infrastructure that was destroyed, we had transport infrastructure that was destroyed, and we had roughly 1.5 million of livestock that was destroyed as well. Earlier, in 2021, Kenya, the country that I'm based in, was struck by extreme droughts, leading to same impacts with loss of livestock. But also what this meant is that the Kenyan government had to displace spending from its treasury, from health, education, basic services and needs, towards addressing climate impacts. So these are the rapid onset events, if you'd like to call them this way, or extreme weather events. And then on the other hand, we have what we call slow onset events. And this is, for example, in a country like Indonesia that has 17,000 islands, low-lying islands. A half a centimeter of sea level rise per year represents the loss of 1.5 kilometers of coastline. That implies the possibility of the Indonesian government in terms of having to relocate its coastal population, to consider heavy investments in seawalls or sea protection infrastructure, which of course as well displace the disbursements from their treasury or from ministries of finance into other expenditures. So when we talk about just transition, rather, I don't want to put the word climate justice out there because it's still controversial and it's a politically unaccepted terminology in the convention, but let's talk about just energy transition. So for example, a country like Indonesia, that's a middle income country with high greenhouse gas intensity, even though it calls out the common but differentiated responsibility principle under the UNFCCC, is still making very strong commitments towards transitioning towards a just energy transition that includes energy efficiency, renewable energies, sustainable transport, clean transport systems, and preserving its very wealthy and rich not only forest cover, but also peatlands cover. Should the peatlands in Indonesia burn up in flames, or it would be the similar thing for boreal forests or for permafrost in the northern countries, should these ecosystems, release the methane, the greenhouse gases that they contain currently and that they stock, that would actually take the whole of humanity over the tipping points. So the tensions arise between what do we do first and how do we do it? Do we invest in the energy transition? Do we invest in nature conservation? If we are talking about the energy transition, it revolves a lot around lithium-based batteries. So we open up the debate also around critical minerals. Critical minerals are found mostly overlaying in areas of rich biodiversity. So do we mine for these to enable the energy transition, or do we preserve the land areas where high conservation value forests, peatlands, and others exist. And, I have 25 seconds left. So going back to the Indonesia example, it's one of those examples where these tensions are really coming to the fore, and where the Indonesian government has made a decision that it will go for both. It will finance its just energy transition via the revenues that it generates from reducing emissions from deforestation, and therefore is investing a lot on enforcement, policy measures, preventing forest fires to preserve peatlands and forests, and therefore use the revenue coming from that to finance the just energy transition, not only for itself, but also for the world globally. And I will leave it at that.